What is the craziest/weirdest thing you have done to avoid facing your fear? I set a timer to go off every 30 seconds to make sure a spider wasn't moving closer to me on a wall nearby. After about 20 minutes of that, I decided I needed to get rid of it somehow. I got a shoe, but was too scared to try and hit it because I was convinced I would miss and it would jump on me. I got a cup to catch it, but then convinced myself that it was too small to catch it, even though the spider was very small. I then got a large Tupperware meant to hold a lunch and used that to trap the spider. At this point I realized I had no paper to put under the Tupperware, so I had to do the most terrifying stretch in my life trying to grab a paper off a table nearby. Then I finally got the paper and started carrying the spider to the exit, but because the Tupperware was so big it was hard to keep the paper flat and not create an opening for the spider to escape. When I tried to open my front door with my elbow, I shifted my hand too much and the spider came skidding up my arm. I screamed so loud my dad thought someone was breaking into the house. I was upstairs in my bed with all my clothes shed and lying in the hall in about 30 seconds. Never moved so fast in my life. I developed a crush on, i.e. became romantically attracted to, someone I was already in love with, i.e. someone I cared about deeply and unconditionally. I was scared to death that she'd reinterpret everything she knew about our relationship based on this new information and become defensive/closed off until ultimately trust eroded and the friendship ended. She'd done nothing to deserve this distrust on my behalf. She's really the most amazingly kind-hearted person I've ever met. It's just that I have anxiety. I confided in our mutual best friend at the time. She said she could not in good conscience keep that secret. She said she'd talk to her about it in 2 weeks, and I had until then to get out ahead of it by asking her out myself. She helped me come up with what to say because I hadn't even given a thought to actually asking her out before then. My intended strategy was to ignore it until it went away. When it came down to it, I had the message and all I needed to do was copy, paste, send. I couldn't do it. It felt like putting a gun to my head and pulling the trigger. It didn't make matters much better that I knew she'd say something to the effect of no. She typically turns someone down, whether she actually wants to or not, because she also has anxiety. I couldn't do something that made me feel personally responsible, but I'm a programmer, so I abstracted it. I made a mechanism that I could not stop. The message string was obfuscated so that someone reading my source code would never see it unless they were fluent in hexadecimal encoded ACI. I had a virtual private server with a script that would send the message at a random time before start of business the following day and deleted my sole SSH key to log into the server. More specifically, it had a small chance of sending every second, so that there was a 99% chance it would sent by morning. This absolved me of responsibility. The universe could still intervene, and by some miracle of statistics it might have been avoided. The only way to get a new SSH key was to contact a human at the company during business hours to verify my identity. Thus the script was guaranteed to execute before I could regain access. Of course, I cold reset my Facebook password to block the script. So I changed my Facebook password in the reset email's password both to something I didn't know and recorded it in 2 places, the script and a flash drive that I mailed to myself, also containing the SSH key to the VPS. Next, I wrote a script that would parse the response into a boolean yes or no, based on the presence of apologetic words/phrases versus excited words/phrases. I tested the script with an innocuous message to a random friend, then set it up again with the live payload and executed. Then I got in my car and drove until I lost signal and camped there until morning. I'm so terrified of public speaking that in college I would do anything in my power to avoid it. On the first day of every semester, I would read through every syllabus to check if there would be a presentation. If there was, I would spend hours calculating what the highest possible grade would be if I took a 0 for the assignment. Then I would work extra hard on all the other assignments and exams, so I could still pass without giving a presentation. This method worked, and I graduated with honors, and never gave one speech. Water bladder buddy. I was in the army and drove around field officers as a lowly PFC. Had a urinary tract infection from drinking the tap water in Korea, and I guess sod you. You used a condom catheter and clipped the bag to your leg. No one ever noticed it, but it felt weird having all that stuff in my uniform. Never once peed in it. Just having it there gave me an option, if it ever felt like I was going to piss my pants. Helped calm me down a lot on our weekly drives to Seattle and Incheon Airport. This was not voluntary, however it certainly forced my hand, so I think it still falls in the what have you done to avoid facing your fear category. I, like many others, am terribly afraid of public speaking, especially in school, when I have months to anticipate a presentation. A few months back, last semester, I had a big group presentation to do. It was a mere 10-minute speech in front of a class of no more than 35 indifferent students, but I, of course, was shitting myself thinking about it for weeks leading up to presentation day. Long story made shorter, I woke up that day 5 hours early, 5 in the morning, from nerves. I then showered, ate a microwaved breakfast burrito, and drank a cup of coffee. Then I headed to my class about 2 hours before it started, and ended up pacing back and forth down the foyer outside my classroom door. Class started and I signed up to be the last presenter to speak, and sat down in a cold sweat, while others gave their presentations without a hitch. It was at this time that I felt my stomach beginning to turn. I had felt pretty awful ever since that burrito and coffee, but I just chalked it up to nerves until now. My stomach was really rumbling. It felt like my insides were a bubbling crock pot. Before I knew it, my bowels had pushed out a small squeak of a fart. The silent but deadly variety escaped my sweaty cheeks like a thief in the night. I grasped my desk and prayed no one would notice. I thought the coast was clear when a girl sitting to my right looked over to me in disgust after smelling the putrid stench of my ass gas. As I reluctantly returned her gaze, with the stupidest of expression my face is capable of, an enormous trumpet burst of a fart shot out of my ass like a bat out of hell, followed up with a spittle of but grease that painted my underwear in brown. I was locked in eye contact with this girl for what felt like minutes, but was in retrospect mere seconds. Then the entire class erupted with laughter as I looked onto the astonished / bewildered faces of my colleagues. Needless to say, I then stood up and ran out of the classroom, never to return again. I almost dropped out of school entirely. This sounds so stupid, but I'm genuinely horrified of the old school ventriloquist dolls. I blame goosebumps. I started seeing a guy, and when I went to his house the first time he had one in his room, I ran and made him put it upstairs. He didn't realize this was a genuine phobia and thought I just found them creepy. So later on he started chasing me with the doll, and I was crying. His roomie realized that I was in full panic and got in the guy's face while I hyperventilated in the corner. He said he thought I was laughing instead of crying, and spent forever apologizing to me while I took shots of whiskey to calm the fuck down. I hate the dentist. I don't know where this fear, hatred, and loathing came from, but from a young age I hated it. The smell in the place. The instruments. Anyway, so I knew I had a dentist appointment, so 10-year-old me got out of bed at 5 AM, put on all the camo clothes I owned, face paint, camo netting, the works, went out into the garden, and hid in a bush. Appointment was at 10 AM. So I thought, if I stayed there till midday I would have missed it, and no chance of being squeezed in late. Eventually people start shouting in the garden for me and looking around. My dad was about a foot from my face, but didn't see me. Went in at 12 o'clock crying. Mum asked me why the hell I hid in the garden. I said because we had a dentist at 10 AM. No love, that's tomorrow. FML. As a toddler I would always wake up in the middle of the night and see ghosts in the hallway. I have no idea what these were, but I still remember seeing these short, slender, opaque white figures moving around the hallway. Weird as hell. Anyway, I was freaked out. My solution? Climb out of bed, run past the ghosts down the stairs, through the kitchen, and into the living room, where I would hide under the coffee table and call for my parents for an indiscriminate amount of time. This happened a lot. Cliff jumping has always been tough on my nerves. It has less to do with height and more with the fact that each of the 3 times I have done it, I had to clear several rocks directly below the cliff. Combining several aerobic exercises in such quick succession can be a bit daunting when you don't have to use those things very often. Anyways, the first time I went cliff jumping was when I was with 3 buddies from high school. We were doing a summer trip up through Oregon and Washington as a last hurrah before we went our separate ways in the fall after graduating. We were on the Oregon/Washington border, parallel to a river. We decided to take a lunch break and pulled off the side of the road. Wandering around, we found a cliff jumping spot. The cliff was covered in stickers from different cliff jumping groups. My friends were quick to strip down and start making their way up the cliff. I was a little hesitant, to say the least. You had to get a running start to clear the rocks below. I too got down to my underwear and got to the top of the cliff. My friends were making their way up right behind me. It was effortless for them as they jumped off the cliff again. They beckoned me to join them. I was a ball of nerves and couldn't. Being an odd group of 18-year-olds, they got an idea. They told me zombies were after me and the only way to live was to jump. They made their way back up and started pretending to be shuffling zombies. This surprisingly helped me ease my tension. They were trying to help as best they could. I pretended to shoot one with an air shotgun and pretended to be out of ammo. Friend fell to the ground, continuing to crawl after me. I took one look behind me and ran for it. I leapt from the cliff and screamed "Fuck!" Landed in the water perfectly fine. My friends and I were jumping off that cliff for about an hour. Was a great memory from that trip. Second time I went cliff jumping, I got a concussion